Older sister always bossing you around?
Yeah, never got a break from it. Even when she couldn't speak. Still managed to boss me around somehow.
With the eyes?
Yeah.
What was it like for you two growing up? What was your relationship like?
We were pretty good friends, I guess. Like, early childhood we got along really well, then, I guess...
We did everything together.
Yeah. So.
He made me go to the adventures, parks. He never was scared about bringing me everywhere. Right, Jake?
Yeah, I figured, like, you gotta live. Like, you can't just, like, sit there and, like, just let life pass you by just because you have one difficulty.
How would you define muscular dystrophy and how it affected you when you were younger?
Younger, it didn't affect me. Younger, elementary school, high school was the hardest because people were going to college, people are getting their first car, and I didn't have a car. I didn't drive, so I was jealous of people driving, going to college far away, walking, but it,
What's up? You got this?
yeah, no, I don't got it. Alright, ask me another question.
Is it okay if I ask your brother one real quick?
Yeah.
What do you think is the most important thing for the world to understand about your sister?
That she's not, like, stupid, and that, like, simply not based off the fact that, like, just, like, not to underestimate her. Like, I guess the way of wording it was wrong, but, like, like, many people think, like, after a stroke, she only has half of a brain, which means she's only capable of doing half things normal people can. No, she has a whole creative way of thinking now. Muscular dystrophy, just because, she's not able to get up and go play basketball or do that, doesn't mean that she's not able to get online on a computer and do some things, or, like, do other necessarily, like, communicative things that don't really require physical activity that she might excel in compared to people who excel in physical activity. So.
Yeah, I started a social media business pre-stroke, and with my best friend and her cousin, and it was the happiest time of my life because I'm like laying in bed, like creating graphic designs, like marketing people. So Jacob was right, because I found a way that I can get information to people in my bed, and the stroke affected it because I didn't talk, my spelling was screwed up, so I'm getting back to that slowly, but it's like Jake said.
Yeah. It's just challenging, but one day at a time,
Would you say your brother's an advocate for you?
Oh yeah. Concert going, theme park going, he's an advocate to see me have fun and don't deal with the complications of people, the ableists, because they don't understand me, but my brother understands me, completely, so it was...
Say that.
So yeah, he's an advocate for me, going out places, handing my wheelchair, picking me up, so I really thank him.
I appreciate that. You're welcome.
What would you say is the biggest misconception people have about your sister?
I don't really know. I wouldn't necessarily say people have like misconceptions. Like people just don't really. People are just. We live in a current world where people are too worried about offending someone to really ask what's going on, or things like that. So the misconception is that she'll be offended if you ask. Like, oh, what's like like. There's nothing technically wrong with her. She's still a perfectly fine human being. But like like you can walk up to her and ask like what happened, or like like what were you born with, things like that. It's not gonna upset a human being. Like it's just like asking someone who can't like write properly or something like that. Like why can't you write properly or stuff like that.
And I enjoy that moment because little kids always got a story to tell me. So I think I understand the kids and I teach them I'm no different. I'm in a wheelchair because my leg don't work. And it's becoming more like Jake said. That parents teach your kids like don't point at disabled girls, like don't point at I like that now because 10 years ago people were pointing, little kids, and I don't get offended, but little kids or adults 50 grand grown adults like, oh, what's wrong, what's your problem, like that's...
But I feel like people also have the misconception that they don't realize that when asking it, like if asked in the proper way, it gives her an ability to exercise her voice and tell people, like this is what it's like to have my condition, this is what it's like for this. So like you right now coming here and interviewing her is you put aside the misconceptions that most people have. Even like like a stroke victim going to speak with a stroke victim, most people think, oh well, it's a stroke victim, they're just lying in bed unconscious, they're a vegetable. It's not necessarily true. It's a misconception, or just like, oh, she doesn't want to get out of bed because she's lazy. That's not true. She could have a very overwhelming day. She's more reactive to stimuli than the average person, so too much light can trigger sensory overload for her. So misconceptions that people think she doesn't want to do stuff because of this, or people like misconceptions just all around ailments of mental health disorders and physical health disorders, and that we got to stop being so afraid of it and more or less become talkative about it. Because if somebody knows what's going on with her, then they'll know, okay, in this situation this might be too much for her. But if you're afraid to ask, you're never going to know what is the perfect barrier.
Could you tell that story? You told me a little bit about how your brother would help decorate your wheelchair before you went to the music festivals. Could you go in depth with that and tell me?
So I had a lot of guy friends at home in New York, and they wanted me to put a Hemi on my scooter. They were always obsessed with my scooter. So I'm like, alright guys, whatever. Buy the paint, buy the glitter, and my brother and Pat and my guy friends all glammed out my scooter before I went to ADC. Jake spray painted.
I remember it going a little different.
Alright.
I remember it going more like, I want my scooter to match my outfit for EDC. I have my scooter, I don't want it to just look regular. I'm going to a rave, I want to stand out. If people are already going to look, might as well give them something to look at. Which was more of it, not like us bored, like, oh, what's that? What do we want to go do? Let's go paint the scooter. It was more like, hey, you guys want to do this? But, in Courtney's view, we just jump to do things. You never ask.
Were you two in high school at the same time?
I got sent to like alternative high schools and shit.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but,
Part of my language.
We were always together because my mom worked night shifts, so Jake would take care of me. We lived 5 minutes away from the high school. So we had an amazing group of friends that, took care of me and never make fun of me. And Jake, helped me in high school with the scooter and lifting me. Never once a challenge.
Would you say you two are best friends?
Yeah.
On some days.
On some days.
What are the other days like?
We're just forced to be siblings.
We think
Completely
different.
differently.
How so?
She's more of a laid back, this type of thing. I'm more of like my way or the highway. And then she had the stroke, and then it switched, and now she's the same as me. So our conflict of interest happens to be a lot more often now than it used to be.
Yeah.
Because now she wants to do something, and she gets her mind set and starts obsessing. And I'm over here like, well, this is my plan that I've already had in place. We're not changing it. And then she's like, okay, well, you know what? We'll go our separate ways for a little bit.
So you could actually see a personality shift post-stroke.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We
Yeah.
joke about it because our father was this type of way, and my sister was more like my mother pre-stroke, and I was always like my father, and now she's leaning more towards my father's way. So we say the stroke gave her more of the Gaber side.
Can you sense that personality change too?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I think spontaneously. We went to New York. We planned that in 5 hours. I missed my best friend, and I told my brother, crying, I want to go back home. I want to go back home. So we packed a bag and drove 18 hours to go back home.
Why'd you decide to do that with her?
I was just, I don't really do much with my days, so like, someone hits me up with an adventure, I'm ready to go. Like, she wanted to go, she was upset, wasn't doing her any better just sitting here. So like, literally, like, I wasn't gonna do much else, so I was like, fuck it, let's go. I miss my friends too, like, let's get in the car and go. And yeah, and then we just hopped in the car and I drove over 18 hours.
And I wouldn't do that pre-show. I would have a plan in place, and after the show, I'm gonna drive back home. And my friends were like, "What? You're driving right now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm in Georgia." Like, yeah. And so I like the spontaneous.
Yeah, like, I've always been a very spontaneous person. I had like ADHD. I got diagnosed at a very young age, and bipolar disorder. So like, I've gotten like manic many a times. So I love the spontaneous trips. Like, within 5 weeks, I drove to New York, drove back down here, flew to Colorado, flew back home down to Tampa, and then drove back to New York, all within like 2-3 weeks.
With me.
And like, when I'm talking about like driving too, it's not like, like, I'd pull over, we'd stop at a rest, like, I just go all 18 hours through.
That's an adventure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm an impatient person, so
Me too.
I'm not waiting a few days to get where I want to be.
Has your relationship changed at all since the stroke?
Yeah, she's like a lot more dependent on me as a
Yeah.
human being.
Yeah.
And
Because he knows me pre-stroke. So he knows me back and forth. I'm afraid to meet new people because they don't know what I'm like pre-stroke. So I'm like, well, So I tend to hang out with Jake, my roommate, my best friend, who's here. So yeah, it's changed.
but it's also like, I feel like there's like, her reasoning now sometimes is a lot more skewed. So it's harder for her to understand things that like she used to understand. Like, if I'm like, oh, like, I'm out busy, like, I can't hang out right now. Like, back in the past, that's like, that wouldn't have been like a stressor. Like, now it's, she needs more human interaction, so she can like deal with the stimuli and keep building progress through her brain. Without human interaction, she starts to get a little stir crazy. So like I've noticed that our relationship's changed in like the way of like she's a little bit more demanding now, and I have to reason with it. Like I just have to go with it because it's easier just to go with it, and then she just is just content. And when she's content, then everybody's content. So.
What was it like for you the month your sister wasn't able to speak?
I didn't cope really well. I didn't really do much. It was saddening. It was like heartbreaking. It was hard to see, so I just avoided it.
Do you remember that month?
Oh, yeah.
What was it like while your brother avoided it?
Well, I couldn't talk, so I'm like, where's Jake? Where's Jake? So, he came and visited me a few times, but, a half an hour. So I understand Jake not coping, as well as my mom not coping, but Jake made up for it, right?
Yeah.
This summer.
When did you eventually find that confidence to cope and become close with your sister again?
I went on like a month vacation afterwards. I just probably like 2.5, 3 months afterwards, I went on like a month vacation and just had to just take it all in, because like seeing it firsthand is like a lot different than just like being away from it at the time. But then finally I was just like, if I'm just gonna avoid it, that's not fair for her. Like she shouldn't be penalized from seeing her family because of something that she couldn't control. So.
And how would you define your relationship today?
Pretty well. Nice.
Yeah, pretty well. No.
Now, before we switch out and I sit beside you, is there anything else you want to say about Court?
Your tattoo, what's it say?
Oh yeah, I got a tattoo for her when she got really sick. It says, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And I feel like it represents her pretty damn well, because she's still here fighting through shit that I personally can't say I would myself. Like, she gives me faith, and just shows perseverance is key. Like, you can't just let all these little fucking, part of my language again, can't let all these little things just take away from what you really want to get out of life, or else you'll just be sitting there hopeless.
What was it like for you to see your brother get that tattoo?
I liked it. He